Welcome to the Practice Discipleship Training Project. My name is Dawn Troutman. I am your host throughout this project, and I am from LutheranLifeCoach.com, and you can find out more about me there. This project is a result of the partnership between the ELCA Youth Gathering and the ELCA Youth Ministry Network. The goal is to provide quality training opportunities for adults who are bringing youth to the gathering and for adults of any kind doing any kind of ministry with young people. We want to equip adults to do excellent ministry with young people. There is a series of 7 webinars, and today is the 7th, although it is not our final webinar, because we are going to go through the series of 7 webinars again, and I'll give you more information on that at the end. The design team was intentional in that we started with 2 webinars that really focused on theology, which is our foundation, and then the 5 webinars, of which this is a part, focus on our skills and strategies that flow out of our theology. So this is one of the skills. Today we'll be talking about planning for the unexpected, and our presenter is Tiger McLuen, President of Youth Leadership. So Tiger will be presenting, and as he's talking, if you'll notice, there is a box on the right side of your screen. If you could please type in questions. Sometimes we will ask you questions, and if you could please type in answers. I will see that in the chat box on the right side of your screen, and I will feed those questions to Tiger at a pause in the talk. So please do type many things. We think of this more as a discussion than a little bit less as sort of a speech that Tiger is giving, so we do need your interaction. So we'll get to as many questions as we possibly can. So first of all, welcome, Tiger.
Well, welcome, Dawn. It's good to be here.
Yes, and you know, how was your weekend? I'm hearing you've been very busy this weekend.
Yeah, we had a big event yesterday, Recharge Conference. About 750 folks gathered together to be encouraged as teams of people in children's and youth ministry. It was really wonderful.
I love it. And you probably had to plan for some unexpected there.
Yes, there were a couple surprises, but nothing earth-shattering, which was good.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'll give the floor to you, and I'll jump in when there's questions and comments.
Great. It's good to be here with you folks. We were just talking about wondering how many of you are new to this webinar. So if, just out of curiosity, if you could type in the word new in that little message box. If you're new, we're just curious how many of you, this is your first webinar. So we'd love to hear from you. We want to talk today about surviving the surprises of youth ministry. And as I was planning this, I have to tell you that I started to think this could be a short webinar. It could simply be, I would say, guess what? There are going to be surprises in youth ministry, and we could close in prayer. Because the bottom line is you are always going to face surprises. So there's a couple big ideas I want to kind of cover today. Things that just remind you of some basic things, that planning doesn't eliminate surprises. That just because you have planned something doesn't mean there won't be something that comes in off the schedule. And also, though, however, that spontaneity, being able to be flexible, is best experienced on top of good preparation. That we want to talk about the fact that, yes, there will be surprises, but don't be lazy in your preparation to create surprises. They will simply happen. And in the midst of all of that, we want to talk about how is it that you and I can be the non-anxious presence in the midst of the surprise. Because leaders make all the difference. Who we are matters in the midst of the surprise. And so we want to kind of think that through. I was thinking about these ideas and subjects as we were going, because all of us, if you've been in ministry for more than a week or two, you know that there's going to be surprises. Planning doesn't eliminate them, and we have to keep working on them. I know a few of you in ministry have control issues, but we all know that if you want to control everything, then youth ministry is not going to be your favorite place to be. It will drive you crazy. So there's always going to be surprises, and this session is going to try to discuss that. So even with great planning, there's always going to be something that isn't on the schedule. So what's the role of us adults? What do we do? And by the way, we're not always talking about negative things. We're not always talking about a bus blowing a tire, although that happens, or Jimmy John's doesn't deliver. But some of them are really good ones where kids really share, and they take too long in a small group, and and you don't know how to end it when things are really going well. And the thing I learned early on is that in crisis and struggles, and when things happen in the schedule, I got tense and I got a little frustrated, and kids would ask me questions. When are we going to get there? Is the bus going to be fixed? Is it, those kind of things. And I would get real tense, and I thought I was faking it really well, and the kids didn't notice it, and that I was being, I pretended that I was, enjoying them, and when really they were an intrusion. Until I remember on a mission trip, I was driving the van, a bunch of us in the van, and I looked in my mirror and I watched the trailer roll into the ditch, which means the tongue had snapped in the trailer, and all of our luggage and all of our equipment was headed to the ditch. And it went down into the woods, and I pulled off on the side of the road, and I started to walk back, and I didn't say anything. I had my chin was, I gritted my tongue, or gritted my chin, and walked around the van. Nobody got out of the van. And as I walked around the van, one of the senior girls said to everybody in the van this message. She said, "Okay, kids, 2 things you got to know. Number 1, don't get out of the van unless Tiger says so. And number 2, don't ask any stupid questions. He hates that." And I remember standing outside the van thinking, I am so busted. I thought I had faked it, and my kids didn't realize how much my control issues got in the way. And here was a senior girl who had spotted it all along. So we got out and we had a great time. But you know what? There's no easy answers to this. We do get stressed out. There's no 3 ways to guarantee no surprises. There's no Bible answers. Thou shalt not have surprises in ministry. We are going to wrestle with this. So if, by the way, you have a quick little story that you can type in, a surprise that happened in ministry, whether it be on a trip, or during regular programming, it'd be kind of fun for you to share that. So type that in. Maybe you've got one that we could hear to see what we've all experienced. The question I wonder about is, when things don't go as planned, why is that hard on us leaders? Why is it stressful for us? Because it pushes our control issues. These big ideas we're going to try to cover. We want to talk a little bit about why is it hard for us. And I've thought through a few things, talked with a bunch of youth workers, and just kind of came up with ideas to get you thinking. Why is it hard? I think one is because it pushes our control issues. Some of us want to have things work, and I find that it pushes it harder when I'm in front of a group, because kids ask questions, they bug us for information, they might get frustrated, and then we get in that. I used to wonder about that. Now, not everybody feels this way. I love surprises. A friend of mine wrote, when they don't mean that somebody's getting hurt, I love being able to surprise. I love that when they make the trips memorable. The students will hardly remember a trip where nothing significant happens. When I say, remember when we had the Cheetah party bus to Chicago because Enterprise canceled our vans at the last minute? Or remember when I fell off the raft twice when we were whitewater rafting? The kids remember that. This person loves surprises. I have to say I wasn't that. It pushed my control issues, and that made it tough for me. Another one that comes up is the fear of making the wrong decision. What if we are in a situation and we have to make a decision in front of a group and we make the wrong one? I think a lot of us it makes it hard. I was on a mission trip with my youth pastor, and we talked about this issue and the struggle. And when we got to the first night after driving 11 hours on the road down to Mississippi, we got to our hotel and the reservation had been canceled. They had misread it. It had been, guaranteed, and yet they made the mistake. And there we all were at 11 o'clock, tired, not having rooms, and trying to figure out, what do we do? Do we stay here and have the extra rooms, some of which are smoking rooms? Do we get in the van, drive further down the road? And I watched my youth pastor struggle with what's the right decision, and you have to make it right now in front of 35 people who are increasingly getting crabby. That makes it hard on us. I think a third reason why it gets hard is there's safety concerns. Some of the surprises are about safety, and that makes it worrisome for us, because if we don't make the wrong decision about a hotel room, that's one thing, but when it comes to people's safety, that's a whole other matter. Wrestling with a couple of, I thought another one is, let's be honest, we want to be a success. We want things to go as planned, not success in the terms of big and But most of us, when we organize something, we want it to go well. We want it to go as planned. This event yesterday, 750 people, I have to say all day, I wanted it to go as we planned it, because in the planning was thinking through what might be a good day. And so that feels good when things go as planned. Another one is we sometimes think that sticking to the schedule is best, or in fact it might be the only way that God could work it, because we got to stick to the schedule. And sometimes the surprise deviates from the schedule in a way that makes it hard on us. So that's another possible reason. Another one to be honest about is, let's be honest, sometimes it's hard for us because we're afraid of ridicule. Kids sometimes think they're funny, but they can be tough on us, can't they? They can say, oh, that was stupid, why did you do that? And I don't know about you, but I don't like to be publicly ridiculed, even if someone's doing it when they think they're funny and they're 15. So that makes it hard. When a surprise happens and we are in front, there's the possibility that someone's going to make fun of us, and that hurts. And in all of that, I think it pushes our insecurity. All of us, if we're honest, have these moments of insecurity. What if they don't like it? What if things turn out bad? What if they blame me? We all have those insecurities, and the minute we're under pressure, those insecurities can pop up. So be aware of those. Another one, a version of it, is we don't like to look bad. We don't like to have people see us sweat and see us under pressure. That's what happened to me. That's why I in essence, and Eileen caught it, is I didn't want the kids out of the van because I didn't want to look bad. Until I could really figure out what to do, I didn't want kids looking over my shoulder and bugging me. And that was an insecurity issue, and that was a fear of looking bad. But that's why surprises are tough, is because we don't have that option anymore. Another one is, let's be honest, it just simply adds stress. And who's not stressed out already? When we're running the trip, there's already stress of organizing, getting kids on a bus, off a bus, into meals, out of the meals. And when a surprise happens, it just throws something on top of a pile that's already big. And so then we react out of stress. And then so we just add more things. A friend of mine was telling a story that, planned ahead and had a couple extra credit cards, but driving 3 vans on a trip at a gas station where they're filling up 3 vans, they declined the credit card. And they went to the second one, and that was declined. They called the credit card company ahead of time, but there they were halfway there, and the credit card is declined. So they have to call the 800 number. And it's like, come on, I'm already busy enough. I'm already stressed enough. Now I have to note that sometimes, remember, I'm not talking about all things being negative. Sometimes positive and negative can go together. Things go really well. The kids are really talking and praying longer than expected, but you get back from the event half an hour late, and a parent's angry that you didn't follow the schedule. So there's sometimes they're tied together. If you have anything to add to this about why surprises are tough on you that isn't on this list, share those, and we want to hear from each other about both the surprises you've had and what makes them hard for you. What's the lesson we can learn from each other about why it gets hard? What I have learned is that flexibility can't be taught, but flexibility is essential in youth ministry. And so what surprises do is they pinpoint our focus. I don't know about you, but I sometimes get distracted, and I start to think that running the schedule is the focus, or getting to the hotel at 3:30 when I had it on the schedule is the issue, when our focus maybe needs to be something else. Remember we did the webinar on strategic planning. We talked about clarity of purpose. That ties in here. Good planning and clear focus is the framework for our trip. Then the surprises are the artwork in the middle of the frame that we can only draw as the trip goes. But what would be our focus in the midst of surprises?
Tiger, I love it.
Great. Do you have any surprises that people shared?
Yeah. I have one so far, and I also have 3 new people on this webinar, so welcome.
Great.
Yes, and we really are here to you people who haven't been here before, so please do type in questions and you will hear them repeated. Rachel wrote that it can be hard to communicate changes to other adults, so that's a tough part of surprises for her.
That's a very good point, Rachel, because adults, gee, this is a surprise, can sometimes be really focused on the schedule, getting stuff done as planned, and then you have to communicate them to changes, and sometimes you're right, it can be very hard, and that's where even they can come back and critique us and challenge us, and that makes it hard. Okay?
I think the other thing is it really shows our vulnerability. We didn't get to pre-think about how to deal with a situation. The youth are really seeing how we react in the moment, and that might not always be pretty.
Yes, as Eileen pointed out, my frailty was evident. I thought I had faked it, but you're right, it does.
Right.
It points out that we are human and we have short fuses sometimes, or we have things that really get us stressed out, and surprises bring those out.
Right. Well, thank you, and I'll jump in when we have some more feedback.
Great. Good. So in the midst of all that and the stress of a surprise, what's our focus? Let's be honest and let's make sure that it's number one is it's always kids. It's always the youth. It's always the students we're bringing. They're the key. Whenever we're going to talk about things, it always comes back to that. Yes, we have to make sure the adults are happy, but we're there so that the students have some experience, that the students are safe. And that's the second one, is we want to make sure we create a safe relational environment. Bus breaks down, key is the students and a safe relational environment. And that's easier said than done, but that should be razor focused, just right there, that we're going to always come back to making sure the kids are having a positive experience and that we have a safe relational environment. For us, when we did that experience of the trailer, actually became a positive experience as we stood together and talked about what are the options, and we kind of laughed about it and realized there was no damage, but we had to figure this out, had to walk down the road and find a neighbor who was more than willing to help us and helped us pull the trailer up, and just became a great relational environment for all of us. And it helped us model the third thing, which is you got to model and live out what we say all the time, trust God in everything, right? It's real easy to say in the office. It's hard to do it on the middle of a trip when something happens. Trust God in everything. It's not always about us, our plan, or our program. It's sometimes something else happens, and that always people supersede the schedule and the program. Whether we're a control person or we really like schedule and we're good at managing the schedule, people always supersede the schedule and the program. And the last one is the lesson that I've learned, and sometimes hard to learn, but it's essential, and that is that this might just be a God moment. This surprise, not suggesting God blows trailer tires or tongues, but in the midst of that, if we're open to it, it might just be a moment where we learn, experience God in a way that we might not have seen in another way. For us, it was exactly that, meeting this neighbor and this older couple's response, and they helped us get a U-Haul trailer, and they stored it over the winter until one of us could come back down later and pick it up, and they fixed the tongue while we were there waiting. And just a great reminder that God's people are spread all over. And I'm not suggesting you don't care about the details. In fact, I think good planning is the detail just that we need. It's the frame, but it's always going to be able to handle the surprises. Because on the backside, by the way, bad planning is not, reacting to surprises. It's creating a mess. So you got to plan well, but then don't be surprised of when the good thing happens. Another example I think of is riding back from a mission trip to Chicago. You're on the way back. You're nearing home. We're in Menominee, Wisconsin. Still, hour and a half away from home, and the bus breaks down, school bus, and we're at the Fleet Farm in Menominee, Wisconsin, and at first the guy says, well, it might be an hour, so, most people can handle an hour, and so we're kind of sitting around, and then all of a sudden it's going to be 4 hours, and the kids are tired, and the leaders are tired, and we're trying to figure out what to do. So You had to go into Fleet Farm and buy the wiffle ball set and design a game out in the parking lot. And we bought more stuff and games on the lawn. And eventually, near the end of the day, now it's 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and they say we can't fix it at all, and we're stuck. So now we're in Menominee. We ended up this was a great God moment, where we ended up finding a church in town, we called them, and the people rallied around, gathered minivans, and they drove all of us home to our home church in Crystal. And every ride was filled with a God moment for that time, as our kids watched God's people pull up and drive people they've never met before and they would never see again, so that they could come home and be with their families. It was a great experience. Now, I wouldn't want to plan that. I didn't like it, but boy, at the end of that, when we talk about our mission trip to Chicago, that's one of the highlights. So we've got to be aware of that. And the key is a leader who is what I would call non-anxious presence. We are the key to this. We have to model it. What does non-anxious presence mean? Whatever issues we have, we do our best to talk to God about those before we go on the trip, while the surprise happens. They need us to be able to be non-anxious present. Have a sense of humor about this, because sometimes you just got to lighten up. Otherwise, you're going to go crazy. Sometimes we need a solution, and we need to have a positive attitude, a Jesus perspective, a flexibility. We have to remain calm, be focused on the students. Always, as I said, have a relational perspective. But hang in there. And again, some of us are listening, going, I know that's going to be hard, but we have to be able to pull that off. Why for me, tires are the problem. Coming back from New Orleans, a blown tire on the van. So we have 3 vans, 2 are up ahead, I'm driving the van, and the front tire blows. We're on the side of a freeway. We have to do a game to get the kids out while 2 adults are trying to fix the tire. We realize, classic, the spare tire is so bad that we can't trust driving kids with a spare tire. So we had to call the other vans back, and we have to do all that kind of stuff. And there's the surprise. We had to get them back. They all took off. 2 adults said, we will get this fixed, and we'll meet you back at the camp. So the whole day was done differently, but the adults were able to be a non-anxious presence. And I think we need to think about, what are the surprises that are the most difficult, positive, negative? Are they the group kind, individual kind? Pastoral care sometimes is a surprise that they finally, an issue they've been wondered about comes out to the surface. So in Minnesota, we have a winter care kit. It's the things they tell you got to put in the trunk of your car just in case something happens. So I was trying to think of what's the winter care kit for those of us doing youth ministries. So here's my try at this, and you are free to add your own observations or suggestions for your trunk winter care kit. So here's mine. Number 1, plan, plan, plan. This is going to minimize surprises but not eliminate them. You need to have emergency information, allergies, church insurance information, contact numbers, all of those kinds of things before you leave. Everything you can do to plan the schedule, the trip, etc. You also need to plan a decision-making strategy. Who's going to decide what? If something happens, so that volunteers know that. Who's going to make the ultimate decision? Sometimes the person who's oldest on the trip thinks they have the authority because of age. You need to clarify that if that's not true. So plan, plan, plan. Second thing is have a list of 3 to 10 group games always with you. Ones that you can pull out of the pocket if the bus breaks down. And it sounds dumb, but we tend to think we're going to remember these, but when you're under the stress, it's hard. So while when the van tire broke, while 3 adults were doing the task of trying to get the tire changed, I guess 1 or 2 adults were back there, and the other 1 or 2 were leading games on the side of the freeway. Get them off in the safe zone, and they were leading these dumb little games, and kids were having a great time. They didn't care. But you got to have a list of those. And don't forget the camera. Sometimes these are what kids want to remember. A picture or a video can help with the experience of the memory. So have a list, plan ahead for that. By the way, this list came from a number of friends of mine as I talked to them about what's been helpful to you. So number 3, I think you have to be honest with the kids. Tell them what's going on. I sometimes, in my stress, kept it to myself because I didn't want to be bothered. But I think you have to tell them. What are the scenarios? What are the issues? What are the decisions that need to be made? What information are you going to gather? And roughly give them a framework. The more we're honest with them, the more helpful. And also it gives you a way to say, and so this is what I need. It's going to take me 45 minutes to make these calls to be able to make this decision. So if you guys could just give me 45 minutes, I want to do that. And that will help with number 4, which is get cell phone numbers of all the leaders with every leader. They need to be close in your phone, and I suggest go old school too. In print, everybody has a copy so that leaders can be communicating with another, especially if you're in different vehicles. That's essentially really important. But when you go on a trip or go on a mission trip or go to the gathering, you need those leaders for anything that would come up when you're not together. A kid hurts themselves. All leaders need to have each other's phone numbers, I think. And then, of course, you have to have that call list for parents so that if you have to communicate back home, every leader has the call list. Whether it's programmed into the phone of the key leader or not, you need to have that so that if something happens, every leader can do that. If you have someone at home who can be the parent link, who can set up all that in advance, so you do a call tree, that's certainly a way to do it. And certainly group texts and all of those kinds of techniques now with technology will help. But phone numbers, if you have to talk to a parent, you need to have all that information with you. Number 6 is safety first, remember? Don't compromise an easy solution at the risk of safety. Don't pile kids in and go without seat belts. Stay together if possible. A rule I've always said is no one ever goes on their own, even if it's the youth pastor. It's always at least 2. So always think in terms of safety of the individuals and the groups so that you can minimize the complications of the surprise itself. Number 7, not in order of importance, is pray, pray, pray. Before you go, while you go, pray for your patients, pray for your non-reactive, non-anxious presence, pray for students, pray all the time. If you are in multiple vehicles, again, a shared itinerary, phone numbers, all that kind of stuff should be set up before you go, so that if for some reason they get disconnected, again with GPS and technology, it may be easier to stay connected, but do everything you can do if you're in multiple vehicles to anticipate the fact that there may be a problem with one of the vehicles that affects the whole trip. If you're going to go with credit cards, bring extra ones and know that you can, whether it be church or personal, what's the backup in case of a problem. And I'm always big on having extra cash along, because sometimes you just need to have some money with you that you need for a surprise. The number 10 one is flexibility. We say all the time when I'm on trips with our kids too, by the way, I was surprised, to be honest, that kids can sometimes be pretty rigid. This is the way it's supposed to go. This is the way we've always done it. This is the, that kind of thing. And we'd just say, put your flexibility hat on. We're going to be here an hour. We're going to be here an hour and a half. It may be longer. Let the guy at Fleet Farm work on the bus and tell us, because we don't know. So it's time to be flexible. And then we'd say, who wants to go into Fleet Farm to help us buy the stuff to distract us for the next hour? And then we went in and bought this stuff. So it's the flexibility hat is huge. And again, some of us are wired that way, and others of us, that's going to be a job we have to work on. I'm very flexible, except under stress. Then I get pretty rigid. So we want to deal with flexibility. I think I may have added an extra one, which is have a sense of humor. My 10 things, if I didn't add it, there it is, number 11 of 10, is have a sense of humor.
Thank you.
It's sometimes fun. Okay, go ahead. You got something, Don?
Well, Kate is wondering, these are great for, vans breaking down and, any number of things that happen. And she's wondering how or what she can do to plan well for pastoral care surprises.
Yes, that's exactly a great category. In fact, we're going to kind of think about some of those things. But pastoral care, when maybe somebody's grandmother dies on the trip, or they, you know, you have an issue of maybe a covenant violation or something, that makes it hard because it kind of depends on when and how that happens. If it's like in the evening when you're at the hotel, you need to be finding time and space in the program to handle that. I don't think any program should be so rigid that you don't have space, downtime, relax time. So there should be those moments where sometimes you say, right now we have to do this, but I want to address that with you, or want to have your small group leader meet with you and me later about that. If it's a crisis like a grandma dies, then you've got to get right on that. As you use the numbers that you've brought, call the family, work a solution out. And usually what it means is an adult will have to come pull away from the group to meet with that kid, to talk through the pastoral care issue, whether that's the youth pastor or their small group leader, depending on the relationship. It may mean that you have to have a moment to address that issue, step out of the program if it's you're at a gathering and there's something going on, but this crisis comes up. You have to make the judgment call. Can it wait till after the large group setting or the thing we're at, or is it require immediate help? If it does require immediate help, then you have to step out of it and deal with it, care for the student, address the violation, and then come up with a plan. And that's, again, what makes it hard, is you can't ever plan for that. And you're already at the stress of being out of town at a big event or on a mission trip, and then a pastoral care thing comes. It's the same concerns you have in any pastoral care. What can we do to be most helpful? What's the issue that's being presented? Is it something we can manage and deal with here, or is it a crisis where it requires a visit to the hospital or a flight home or something like that? And you have to then navigate all of that and make the proper decisions that are pastoral, usually in conjunction. At that point, if it's those kinds of flying home, you're talking to your senior pastor, you're talking to the parents, and you're coming up with a joint plan to take care of the student who's dealing with the issue. Does that make sense?
Yes, and just as a follow-up question, do you have any words of wisdom about the other kids on the trip? You know, how do you keep going with something when you know so-and-so has stepped away and her grandmother died and we're all worried about her, and etc. Or these two people broke the covenant, and are we just ignoring that? And how do you deal with the rest of the group?
Okay, that comes back to, that's a great question, is what do the students need in the surprises? And what they need is you to be the leader to give the framework. So it would be to say, we just got word that, you know, Sarah's grandmother died. We are meeting with her to find out what's the best way we can be helpful. Here's what we're going to do as a group. We're going to finish, you know, we're going to stay in the session while we meet with her and talk to her parents, come up with a solution, and then we're going to meet together and begin and pray for, and we'll let you know what happens next. So that if you don't have a solution, you tell them, here's the framework. The decision will be made in X amount of time, or after these two things happen, or after this, whatever this situation. We're going to take her to the hospital and get her checked out. She'll come back. When we know exactly what the situation is, we will then meet as a group, and I will bring that information. But you got to give them clarity, or drama will go skyrocketing.
Right.
And that's when we as leaders need to be thinking in terms of two dimensions: taking care of the student, whether it's a covenant violation or they're ill or did they sprain their foot or break their foot? Is it, you know, we have to go to urgent care. Whatever, you have to take care of that. But the flip side is, you're right, you have to turn to the group and give them a framework. And that's why you need phone numbers between leaders, so that you say, here's a decision-making process. I am going to take the student to the hospital. You are in charge of communicating these three things to the group, so that, you know, when I know what I know, I will tell you, you can tell the group. We'll meet together after that.
Wonderful.
And then, yeah, you got to handle both.
And Ryan has a related question. He wrote that it seems like on youth trips and youth gatherings and all these very intense experiences, problems and issues that kids deal with at home really bubble to the surface. Like the experience triggers the problem to bubble up, and his examples were like depression, relationships ending, whatever. So his question is there a way to prep the group before you go to be able to deal with those things proactively?
Yes and no. Yeah, I think he's right. When you go on a trip and you're in new settings, and sometimes when kids are bumping into their own faith growth and God showing up in their life, things do bubble up, both positive and negative, things they want to deal with, things they want to talk about. I have not figured out a way to do it ahead of time so that it doesn't happen on the trip. Because when you're talking about it beforehand, it's a theory and an idea. When you're in the experience, it's a real experience in the moment. And so I have found, maybe others would have a different perspective, that if I talk about it, I can refer to it later, which is really good, but it doesn't mean that it won't happen later. See the difference? The difference is if I say, on this trip, we are really hoping you're open to God, that you're open to what you're teaching. You'll be more honest about who you are, that we have a safe environment. And in that, there's going to be stuff that will come up that you might not have known about before, or you haven't thought about for a long time, or it might be good, it might be hard, but we want this to be a great trip where we can grow in all those areas. You can say that, and what you hear is theory. But the value of saying it isn't in prevention, but it is in when it happened. You can say, remember when we talked beforehand? That, after 4 days on a mission trip, we're all tired and things kind of bubble up. So let's find out, is it tiredness? Is it a God thing? Is it, a strain of relationships because you're sleeping in a dorm room with people? And what is it? Remember we talked about it? So if its value is in referring to it while you're experiencing it, so it doesn't feel like it came out of the blue. But I don't think that it prevents it. Is that helpful? I mean, I'm trying to figure out the difference between the two.
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Any other insights?
Those are the questions for now. I'll let you go a little longer and jump in again.
We're getting close to the end.
Okay.
So people have some here. Yeah, as like I said, it's kind of like surprises are coming. Get ready. I'm just thinking in terms of this whole idea, that the struggles that we all face, this doesn't involve 10 easy steps. I wish, even though I tried to create the little 10 winter care kit, this is one of those that simply is what it is. And all I know is that a healthy leader, if you want to be a leader that has any chance to manage it, then you're going to have to be able to be honest with yourself. And that is to say, what parts of surprises are hardest? When I made my list, you might have another thing on there, but look at that list and say, why is it that it makes it hard? Is it because of the public nature? Because of the stress of having to decide right now? We all do this. Usually the stuff is not that we've never experienced before, but it's the stress. So I would encourage you, by way of kind of wrapping up, that to look through that and really pick out the 2 or 3 that are for you the stress points. Eileen did that for me when she simply said, here are the 2 things. Don't get out of the van unless Tiger says so, and don't ask any stupid questions. He hates that. I realized those were my 2 issues. I wanted control to gather my thoughts and not have kids poking at me with questions. Once I admitted that, it became, I still had to deal with that. So in crisis, I would often say, kids, you need to give me 5 minutes to kind of gather my thoughts. I got to figure this out. So if you could give me 5 minutes, and the other leaders then, I could admit it and talk to them and say, if something happens, give me 5 minutes, because I'll come around, but I'll be crabby for 5 minutes, and that's not going to be helpful. So my leaders would just kind of, okay, here we go, and they would be the ones that have the games and recreate them, and I would kind of wrestle, and then I'd come back, not because I'm trying to fake it, because that was my list. I wish I was someone else, but I'm me. So I had to face it. I want you guys to look at your list and say, here are my 2 or 3. And then be willing to name it to your other leaders, because you'll find some leaders who go, oh, I can help you with that. I totally don't get stressed out. And you're like, oh, I hate you, but it's great to have you on my team.
Kate suggested, and maybe you have some thoughts about this, she said, I think it helps if the group has met and spent time together before the trip, trainings, or retreats where they have shared some things so they're in a safe relational space.
Kate, that was, I don't know that we have named that one, but I would say there are two huge things about any trip. A little sidebar. One I kind of addressed and another one I think last time, but I think you're exactly right. I don't think anyone, this is my overstatement, I don't think anyone should go on any trip, whether it be a retreat or a mission trip or to the gathering, without having an appropriate before-trip training, preparation, community building information. Now, it depends on how long the thing is, that as to how much training you have or what the experience is. When I do cross-cultural mission trips, the training is much longer, much more detailed, much more intensive than it might be for something that would be more local or whatever. But I think, Kate, you're exactly right. Part of the deal is you got to help the group get to know each other a little bit and know what's going on. And that's where you can make your pre-trip statements like, there might be surprises, and here's how we're going to handle them. There might be drama. Here's what we want you to understand about that. Really important they hear good stuff from the leaders, but they also, like you said, need to hear from each other and find out this is going to be a group that I'm looking forward to experiencing this event with. So I think you're exactly right. The second one is the one I mentioned before, which is I'm committed to, and this is just my own opinion, at the end of anything, a gathering or mission trip, a debrief time every day, where you gather as a group to say what happened, how you feeling, where did God show up, what can we pray for, you know, what's going well, what's not going well, and not minimize or cut that out for the program. I think that's essential. But that's my commitment is beforehand, Kate, you're right, talk about, build a group, talk about agenda, talk about expectations, talk about what will happen to surprise, and then every day have an opportunity to do that safe, debrief, relational, possible God moment reflection. It's a great perspective.
Wonderful. And then Jenny had a couple, they've all been good comments, but she has kind of a two-part thing. She wrote, regardless of surprises, since we are in the age of technology, for instance, if our students have their cell phones, they find out a problem is going on at home, they tell their friends and not their leaders about it, the youth all find out before the leaders, what do you do then? And then as a follow-up, kind of the opposite, if she's hearing from parents every day about how things are going, do we put a limit on that or any suggestions? So it's really about the texting with home is the overall.
Yeah, and maybe use helicopter parents through those kind of conversations, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Each person and church in today's world has to come up with how they deal with technology and policies on trips and all of that. And everybody, I've seen the whole range of reactions to that. That's not something we can address here, but I think she's addressed, as I hear it, a couple things. One is when they're gathering information through technology before the leaders, that's just a great reminder that leaders, part of the whole deal is being with the students, and if you're just picking up something, you just simply lean into it and ask, so what's going on? Sounds like, well, all of a sudden you're all texting at the same time. What is something happening? Be willing to ask that question. It might be something positive. Somebody just had a great experience and they're sharing it. It might be negative. It might be drama at home that is distracting. I think that stuff can be very distracting because one of the rationales to doing a retreat, a mission trip, a gathering is to get kids out of the normal, to be open to the possibility that in the new they see and hear things they don't see and hear in their normal world. So that's why the whole policy of technology, whether you have a policy that during the day they can, then at night they can, or some people say not trips they can't at all. I don't know how you're all going to work that solution out, but I say if you do have kids with technology, and you even remotely pick up that some drama is occurring because of that, you want to have a conversation individually with those kids, and it might become a group conversation, a debrief night, which is to talk about that. How is technology actually getting in the way of this trip right now? And then have them talk about that. And then you just share and talk and wonder and pray about that together as a group, because that's a safe, real-life issue. And when it comes to parents, there again, I think you want to decide ahead of time in a pre-trip, do you have a policy on that? Would you want them checking in at home every day? What do you tell the parents at a parents' meeting? Trust us. Don't directly. I mean, I don't know, but you have to kind of ask it. Every group has to ask that question, and if you do want to have a policy or at least recommended guidelines, decide what that is, make sure it's accepted across the leadership team, and then talk to your students and parents about that policy and why you believe it and what you want to do about it. And if parents are getting in the way, oh boy, that's a pastoral care issue, isn't it? You may have to have a conversation with a parent. You might have to have the conversation with a student and say, how is that helpful, unhelpful? How is that distracting you from what we're doing here? What can we do to help you? What are the reasons why that's a recurring theme for you, that you're checking in with mom 5 times a day? In fact, she's telling you what to do from 2,000 miles away, when we in fact would think that maybe we could help you with that. I think those are great pastoral care moments, even though they're very frustrating. So I'd say talk about it ahead of time, determine your framework, and then pay attention, because you will see technology being used, and you might want to lean in. I'm always big on asking questions. Just sit next to kids and say, what's going on? Looks like whatever you're doing is getting you frustrated. How are you? Because that's why we're there. It's the students. Make sense?
Yes, thank you. Dave gave a great comment, just a framework for us. He says he tells his group the 3-problem rule. If they expect 3 group problems for each individual on the trip. So if there's 22 people traveling, there's going to be 66 problems. And he said it just sets a good expectation.
Holy moly. Does he announce that at the parents' meeting? Because if I'm a parent going, holy cow, you're going to have 66 problems, I don't know if I want to send my kid. But it's a great one for the leaders to talk about.
Yes.
So then if you only have 37, you say, what a great trip that was.
You can beat your own odds.
That's right. That's a great way to set the bar high, Dave.
Right. There's just another thing to add to that list of preparing, is having a point person back home. And I actually, in my own experience, I'm just adding to what's being said here. In my own experience, just when something pretty dramatic happens, you do bring a kid to the hospital. It's helpful that you're like, this is the pastor back home that I'm going to call. If they need to visit the family, they're there. Just having the point person back home who is going to kind of do some risk management or strategizing with you when they've had the full night's sleep and they are near to the parents geographically.
Very good point, Dawn. Because that's partly, there's the phone tree, which is just for basic information. We're going to be an hour late coming home, so don't tell all the parents not to be in the parking lot at 10 o'clock. We'll be there at 11. That's a different kind of thing, but you're exactly right. For issues, for crisis, for serious stuff, to have a point person that you've talked to on staff or whatever, that's really a very good point.
Great. So any closing thoughts for us, Tiger?
There's going to be surprises. Closing prayer. That's it. No. Know that you're not alone. In the midst of surprises, don't lose your focus on safety, group dynamics, and the issue of seeing God at work. If you kind of keep those in mind and take a breath, you and your leaders can figure a way out through the surprise, figure a way out through the drama. You can figure out a way through the crisis. And it might even become a highlight of the trip. Now, don't create surprises to make a highlight. Let that just happen. But those might happen. And if you've looked at the list and you've identified 2 or 3 issues that are yours, then between now and the trip, just do your own kind of talking to God about that. Say, God, make me be more patient when I'm impatient. Let me give up control when I'm all about control. Let me see the life of the students instead of the management of the program. Whatever it is, name it, talk about it in your preparation, leadership. even say it out loud, I might get a little controlling, but here's why, and I really want it to not be that, to get in the way of the trip. We're here for you to grow in your faith, to build a community together, and to serve in the name of Jesus. And name those things so that you're always reminded of our focus. And then hang on for the surprise, because the tire's going to get blown, or the hotel's going to cancel reservation, or something's going to happen. And then enjoy the journey and have a sense of humor. So hope it's been helpful, and I appreciate your insights and comments.
Thank you. And thank you very much for being here, Tiger. Our next webinar, this is not the end. It's the beginning and the end. It's a series of 7 webinars. This is the 7th, meaning that if you do want to listen to any previous ones, they are recorded and archived, and they are on the ELCA Youth Ministry Network website. So please feel free to download it. I will double back so that I match the PowerPoint. There is Jeremy Meyer's face. The next webinar is January 22nd at 2 o'clock Central. We have Dr. Jeremy Myers that you see pictured there, and he will be speaking about Lutheran theology, God at work in the world. And that one is really great. You're really going to want to interact with him and dig into some of those questions. So that webinar, this webinar, all the previous ones have been recorded, and you can download and listen to them anytime. So if there's members of your congregation, volunteers, colleagues, whoever wants to listen to it, it's great. Rachel did just write in, and I want you to hear this, Tiger, that she just wrote that it's very helpful. So thank you from Rachel and from everyone else, I'm sure, and from me especially. So this and all 7 webinars will also be presented as workshops at the ELCA Youth Ministry Network Extravaganza in February in New Orleans. It's coming right up, February 9 through 12. For those of you who don't know, the Extravaganza is the church's annual gathering for adult leaders in children's and youth ministry. So there's great speakers. In addition to Tiger, we have 42 workshops, we have music. This year's theme is Go, and the event focuses on spiritual renewal, great continuing education, and opportunities to network with others who are doing the same kind of ministry as you. More information is available at elcaymnet.org/extravaganza. Also, each synod in the ELCA has a trained coach who will be offering these training seminars, as well as the content from some of these webinars locally in your own synod. So you can look on the calendar to find your local training by going to elcaymnet.org/ELCA training overview. So again, our next webinar is with Jeremy Myers. It's scheduled for Sunday, January 22nd at 2 p.m. Central, and you can register at elcaymnet.org/ELCA training overview. Again, my name is Dawn Troutman. I'm from LutheranLifeCoach.com and involved with these webinars and the gathering and this extravaganza coming up in New Orleans, and I'd love to meet you there. So thank you all for joining us, and we will see you online in a couple weeks. Goodbye.
Goodbye.